Hi, welcome back to ActionScript 3. In this session we're going to look at working with the user interface. So far we've actually done some exercises on how to actually use a button to generate our code, but today we're going to move on to a new one where we want to actually have information appear in text boxes rather than our trace window. To see the project in its full, we're going to just run this at the moment, and we can enter a limit for our random number. So if I want to put in here 6 and click start, it will generate random numbers between 1 and 6. Otherwise, if I wanted to, I could change this to 100. It would then generate numbers between 1 and 100. So that's a project we're going to work on today. So first of all, if you notice, I'm using a sort of a different view. If you want to change your view at the moment under workspaces, I'm actually working designer, but I've also changed some of my palettes and I've floated them and docked them. And we'll talk about that as we go along. But most people either work in classic view, which is the old CS3 view, or Creative Suite 3 view. Otherwise, most people will be working in the designer view. But as we go along, we'll talk about that. So first of all, we need to start a new project. So I'm going to go File, New, and ActionScript 3. Now, with our timeline, if you can't see your timeline at the moment, if you go to Window, you can turn your timeline on. I've docked it back to the top where the ActionScript 3 one is, and I'm going to label this by double-clicking a GUI. Now, when we create a project, there's actually two parts to it. There's the Graphical User Interface, and then there's the coding part. But because we're going to be talking to the Graphical User Interface, we really need to create this before we actually go write our code. So most people actually do a quick design, and then from their design they'll actually be able to then create their actual application. So if you've done this before, which you would have, you would actually have a piece of paper with what's sometimes referred to as a mud map, or just a rough GUI, which shows us our input, output, and also the static text things that we need to know, which are also called labels. So let's have a look at creating this. So on my GUI layer, which is the first one here, we're going to actually place a text box. Now there are three different types of text boxes. So I'm going to click on text and just click on my screen at the moment, and I'm going to bring up my properties panel. If you don't have your properties panel, once again, all the panels are under Windows, so there you got Apple 3 or Command F3, and that will open up your properties panel for you. Then what I've done is I've clicked on the little arrow here, which brings it back into the little dock, and I've actually stuck these together so I can actually move them apart if I want. But at the moment, these are the three main panels that I use, plus my timeline at the moment. So let's have a look at this. This is a text box. But if I go to the properties, you'll actually notice there's some different things. Under here there is the TLF text box, which then has different ones where you've got editable, selectable, and read only. Otherwise you can go back to the classic text box, which most people are accustomed with, which has our input, dynamic, and static. And you notice that they're the same as what the other ones are. So I'm going to leave it in classic mode at the moment. Now if I'm going to put a title on, I'm going to use a static text. Now static text means it doesn't change. In here also I can select the color. So once again I'm going to select blue. I'm going to use a very similar one that I used before. And then under the font type, please make sure that you select use device fonts. If it's set to the anti-alias ones, you'll find you'll have some issues with runtime and inputting data later on. Now once I've done that, I'm going to type up here random number generator. Now the random number generator will actually change if I grab these handles and stretch the box. Okay, now if I want to make a better title for this, I can then just go over and highlight the word, go back into my properties panel. I can then slide this across, which is a different feature rather than typing in the numbers. I can then stretch the box out again to make it sort of fit how I would like it to be. If you want to change the font, you can change the font at this time, and you can, if you want to nudge it, I can select the outside of it, then use my arrow keys to nudge the whole box across, or in this case I'll just slide it across to roughly center. The other thing in the properties panel that you can do, you can actually change the font type, etc. There are a few more little options as well. If you scroll down, you've actually got centering of the text. You've also got the position, spacing, margins, and things like that. So at the moment, that's a static text box. In the runtime version, if I run this program now, you notice it's there on screen. I can't click on it, I can't move it, so therefore it's sort of stuck as a program that can't change, or a text box that can't change. So that's why it's called static. It doesn't alter it, so we sort of call them as labels. Now some of the other labels that we have on our project is we need to know our limit. So grab my text tool here, head back to the runtime. I need to know the upper limit. Some other things I need to know is also what the random number is. And now, we can't just say upper limit, we probably need to tell the user to enter upper limit. You notice also it's the same font size and same color, everything is my title. So I probably need to highlight that, make it a little bit different so people when they look at it know it's a little bit different. So we'll scale that down a little and I'll go with enter limit. Also now, because we're using the same thing, we can actually go random number and we can slide that into place. So these are all labels. So when in our runtime view, once more, we can't select them, we can't do anything with them. So what we then want to do is have a look at the other type of text boxes. Now this is a great little project because we need to actually create an input box, because this is where we're going to collect the upper limit. So you know, if it's going to be 100 or 10 or 50 or whatever we like. So let's go into our tools, select the toolbox, text box this time, click here, and we can actually stretch this out if we like. But under the properties, we're going to change it from static to input, so we can actually collect the information. But you also notice this little box here moves. So if I change it back to static, see how it's in the top right hand corner, change it to input, it's bottom right hand corner. If I change it to dynamic, you don't really see a difference, but you notice that this text box here has a change between the labels, or between the static and the input. So what we're going to do is move that sort of down into place now. In the runtime though, we won't actually see any information. See how it's clear, but I can type, I can click there. The user can't see that text box. So we can actually go on the properties and we can come down, and there is a way of actually putting a border around it. So this little icon here, show border around text box, but rather than using a border, I'm going to actually go into my tools. I'm going to grab the line tool. I'm also going to go on the properties. I'm happy with red. I'm just going to make the stroke just a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to draw a line underneath this. So in the runtime view now, when I click on that line, people will see that. At the moment the font's still centered. I might be happy with that at the moment, so we'll leave that there. And then I need to make another text box. So once again, roughly the same size. I'll move that down into position, but we need to change its properties from being input to dynamic. So dynamic text boxes are what we use for output. Remember, once again, you need to use device fonts. So this is where the number's going to show. And I also need to put a line in again so we can see where that number's going to come out onto. Alright, we're nearly there. We've got our input area, we've got our output area, we've got some static labels on the screen. The only thing we need to do now is actually generate a button. So if you want to, you can skip through the video a little bit and create your own button. Otherwise, you can just watch me create a very quick button. So if you're new to buttons, what we need to do is we're going to grab a simple object like a square. I'm going to go into the properties. The stroke is around the outside. I'm just going to select black. Fill, I'm going to have the red button. And I'm just going to draw a square down the bottom here. I'm now going to place some text on that again. Now once again under properties, it's going to be static. The color I want to use a just off-white, and so I'm going to use a bit of a grey color. I'm going to scale it up just slightly at the moment, and I'm just going to click in here and type the word start. Now when I go back to tools and grab the solid selection tool, I can then move that into place. If I use my arrow keys on the keyboard, I can actually nudge it around as well. So that's the start of my button. I could leave it just like that and turn it into a button. So we're going to go highlight, modify, convert to a symbol. We need to give it a name, so this is going to be Start BTN. It's going to be a button. Its center registration is going to be in the middle. I'm going to click OK. I'm now going to give some functionality to the button. So I've just double clicked it, gone from the main timeline inside the Start button. I'm just going to push F6. Hold down my function key on the laptop. So F6, F6, F6 to the hit. In my over, I'm going to go Command T. I'm going to make it grow in my over, so I'm just going to link them together. Change it to 110%. And in my down state, I'm actually going to change it, go Command T. I'm going to reduce it to 90% and make it shrink. So now when I click on scene 1 and go back up to the main timeline and run this, you notice that the button now has a bit of an animation. So I've created the button. The last thing I need to do is actually give it an instance name. So I'm going into the properties. Under the instance name, I'm going to call it BTN, which is a naming convention for button, and Start. So that's the name of it. And I'm going to just highlight this at the moment and copy it. So now we're at the point where the whole GUI layer is ready to go, except for we need to actually do our instance name for the output or our input box. So properties. Now because it's a text box, it's going to be TXT, and I'm going to call it limit. And then when my output box, I need to give it an instance name. It's going to be text box again, TXT, and I'm just going to call it just output. It's a little bit boring, but we know that that's the output box and that's my limit box. So now everything's labeled. So just to sum up the GUI interface, or creating a GUI interface, I create my labels, I put on my text boxes, I create my button, I give them all instance names, so now I'm ready to write my code.